In what way do you think this could affect leadership and governance in the country?
In Nigeria?
Yes, in Nigeria. Is that likelihood of this also changing the format that we know of it?
The only hindrance, it would have revolutionized selection of leaders.
Okay.
In fact, what is going on in the world today, like somebody said, is that it is people who are, and I don't just want to name certain places, but when I say certain places, even in Nigeria, it has happened in certain recent elections.
Okay.
That it is the person who is the most social and out there as a public figure that people are likely to elect into positions of leadership. In other words, you have even someone like Donald Trump, who was elected and he was on stage with people that had far more experience in governance, that could articulate positions on foreign policy.
Yeah.
That it was clear that this man was not even aware of certain policies in government, certain things. He wasn't even aware that UK had nuclear power, you know, so he was ignorant about certain things that you would have said were basic things for being elected into positions of that. But people are now electing people that are celebrities, almost like that are public there, that they can trust, that they have met, you know, and all of that. So in Nigeria, all right, because of the hindrances that people are not as educated, the literacy level is not spread that way, and the penetration of some of these things, digital space, is not as deep, but it will significantly affect whoever gets elected, shaping policies. It will affect things in the middle class, and significantly. I think it will reduce ethnic and tribal sentiments after some time. Maybe not in the next 5 years, but the younger generation in this country who are socializing in that space are not as ethnic conscious or as tribalistic as older people in the post-independent era, where people were defined according to tribes. They are just like they are developing more identity in that social space. Your address is no longer your physical location. Your address is where you are at. All right. So right now, for example, even embassies are asking, what's your social media handle and all of that, because your identity is being defined more by that than saying where do you live physically and all of that. So there's real changes. There are actually real changes that are going on. All right. I mean, real changes that are going on. I mean, I lead people, young people. There's a massive shift because there are conversations going on in places where the powers that be can't control those conversations. I mean, back then, if you control major newspapers, you controlled major outlets, you controlled what was going into the minds of the people, so you could regulate things. But that disruption is going on now because people are putting things out there in social media space. There are conversations that are not being monitored, not being inspired by power brokers. So you're likely to see things emerge that people may not have real control over. The only problem is, I don't know whether it's as widespread. We have as much digital penetration to drastically change the way. But I can assure you that by 2023, I think it will be very difficult. You will have to become, I mean, if you are going to lead this country successfully, you will have to be, even if you want to enrich yourself, you have to be smart about it. You will have to be more sophisticated about things that you are doing. All right, because anybody can bring out any document now and put it out there. I mean, look at what's going on in NDDC.
Yeah.
You know, you can't shut yourself up somewhere. Everybody puts it out there, and it has an effect on your family. People see your children at school and ask your children, was that your father I saw that was doing this on television? So it begins to, you know, what will never have happened before, it begins to become more embarrassing. All right, people are things you could control, you just couldn't, and being able to control information is I mean, back then when we were growing up, you do a coup, you only had to take over one radio station, Radio Nigeria. You lock it down, you are good.
Good.
Now, you can't do that. You possibly can't do that. Because somebody can even bring out fake news somewhere and say troops are coming towards, before you know what's happening, all kinds. So we live in a different world and space. All right. And it's completely different.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit about your growing up years? Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Yes, I'm very proud of my heritage because I was born in Ibadan. And I will say this, many people don't really understand that when we say you are born in Ibadan in the late 60s and early, people really don't get it. Yeah. What happened at that particular point in time was that it was the capital of Western Nigeria. Yeah. So the first university in Nigeria was situated there. A teaching hospital, which was the fourth best teaching hospital in the Commonwealth in 1972, was there, University College Hospital. You had some of the finest people in legal luminaries like F.R.A. Williams, all those people, they were situated there. Anybody who came into Ibadan came in predominantly for academic reasons. My family predominantly is a Lagos family, but my father moved to Ibadan because he was an orthopedic surgeon, and that was where, at that particular point in time, they had a department for, when he came back from England, on orthopedic surgery. So he moved there. So the whole drive of Ibadan was about the schools there, all right, about the university there, so that's how it was. So you had people like Professor Wole Soyinka, that's where they were. You had all these people who were situated. So it was an intellectual powerhouse, all right? I mean, I grew up in a place where, to my left of where I lived, was the first female senior advocate in Nigeria. Right in front of the building was right in front of her, which was across, was where the Archbishop for the Anglican Diocese lived. Next to that, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, all right, lived right in front of us. When you go down the road in front of us, the Chief Justice of Western Region lived there, just on this road here. So you had neurosurgeons that were there. You had, in that estate, what I'm trying to say was that it was an intellectual, strong community that was there. And we grew up in that intellectual environment, all right, which is why I am the way I am today. And people ask me, where do you get the idea of things like platform? As a pastor, you are doing this. It came out of, defining God in that world in which I grew up and trying to reach that world with ideas and concepts that I felt. So it was that kind of community in which, I can mention names of people today in Lagos who, now, but there are two things with that. The second thing is it was a very family-oriented place. I came to University of Lagos and I had a culture shock because in Ibadan at that point in time, if you lived in a house, the person might drive a 504, but he will have a garden, he will have a large compound. There'll be family. People will eat breakfast together, lunch together, dinner together as a family. I got to Lagos, then I suddenly see just no compound, but you see Mercedes Benz parked there. No, so I was, what's going on here? You find people that had means, but wasn't, and all of that. So so it was a different climate that I came into, and I don't know whether I'd completely recovered from the shock of that, but that's how it was. It was a very strong family-oriented place. However, what I saw was that because of the way that place was, everything was laid out. So if you went and to lecture in the university, you are lecturer grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, senior lecturer, senior lecturer. If you are in medical field, you are this, senior this, consultant, professor, assistant. Everything was laid out. So there was nothing like boldness. There was nothing like risk taking. There was nothing like audacity. There were a few people sprinkled around who were doing that. But the main thrust of people was about a path. But when you came to a place like Lagos, there was more of audacity, there was more of boldness. People were taking risks, they were doing business, and were, coming out. So what actually happened? Because I had a friend once who was telling me this. We were classmates, and one of our classmates was working in an organization, and she was upset and said, how can that guy who was very brilliant in school be working for these people? How can you do that? Don't do that. So I said, look, you don't understand, Ibadan. We grew up in an environment that was intellectual, that was very academic, but we didn't develop skills like risk taking. We didn't develop skills like boldness. We didn't develop skills like stepping out to do things. All right. So to a very large degree, many of the people that grew up in that climate live abroad today because that's where they can find those systems that were in existence there. All right, because the whole landscape has scattered. In other words, you don't even know where you're going, So, but one of the disadvantage of that was that there were skill sets in terms of risk taking, in terms of courage, in terms of boldness that gives you access to ownership. All right, and be able to own things that was lacking. So what you find is people can go into top management and do many things, but they are unable to own some of those things. And so that's what I would say about it. But I won't trade it. All right, the experience I had there for anything. I mean, like somebody said, almost everything good that is happening in the city of Lagos is traced to somebody who grew up in Ibadan. And it is not very far from the truth.
I was going to ask you, can you also share with us at what point did you get the call to go into the ministry?
Oh, that's quite interesting. All right. So what happened was, I decided when I was young that I was going to go to Lagos for a different experience. And so what happened was I had this friend of mine who is dead now, and we decided we were going to be roommates together in school in a hall in Lagos, University of Lagos called Mariri Hall. Now it so happened that we got into a room called the room number was U218 and U318. They were starting a fellowship, just started U318 right above us, and these were people that at that time Christianity was just coming out of what we knew as the SU movement.
Yeah,
and then it was getting more contemporary, and this was the Contemporary Fellowship University of Lagos that started, that you could go in and see people that looked like you, dressed like you, all right, who were serious about their faith in God. So I became close to the leader of that movement then, and he used to preach to me and preach to me and preach to me. Eventually, all right, I think after about a year, I finally got converted and started. And what happened in University of Lagos? 1985 was when I, first of all, but I became real serious 86, 87, when I went back to Ibadan. And I think there was a lockdown. There was a long period of Babangida's lockdown, I think. I went to a church called Scripture Pasture, all right, in Bodja Estate, Ibadan. And that's when I got serious. But eventually I came, when school, I eventually became the president of that fellowship. And that was where I discovered that this was the life calling that I had, and got into it.
Okay. And did you have you have to go for training and all of that after that?
Well, you see what happened at that generation, all right? And that generation, at that particular period in time, people started churches. People like Bishop Oyedepo, people like Reverend Tunde Jordan, Pastor Louis Johnson. So there are people, Bishop Wale. Okay, they were older than us, but it was principally the same kind of movement. They started churches on the outside. At that particular point in time, fellowship groups started on campus. People like Reverend Chris Oyakilome. All right, people like there are people that started those fellowships there. Now, my own generation, we got saved. We're just next to that, got saved there. So what happened was that the training that we had was in running campus fellowships.
Okay.
We didn't have any formal theological training, but we actually spent years running campus fellowships, preaching, and all of that. And then people went out. Now, of course, the people who did best were people that were exposed to who either worked maybe while they were much younger in churches, large churches that had structure, so they were given that structure, or probably worked in the corporate world for a while, because what was required wasn't exposure to scriptures. People had that, but what people really needed to succeed from that environment was actual structure. Okay, so those people who had structure within their setup were the ones who came out and did best.
Okay.
Now, of course, in all reality, then those people realized some of the what we'll say, the things that in their own lives they wish that they had those things when they started. So they started Bible schools to transfer what they lacked in their own life that they finally came up with into the lives of younger people coming up.
Okay. At the start of Covenant Christian Center, what was the unique idea, and what would you say informed the way the church is structured?
Right. This is well, I actually didn't want to start a church.
Okay.
Okay. I actually didn't want to be a senior pastor of a church.
Okay. Why?
And maybe it's this Ibadan mindset. I wanted to work for somebody. All right. I felt I was an interpreter of people's dreams. I will help you interpret what you are doing and do it. So I actually went to, but because, by the grace of God, I was gifted. So what happened was, when I joined the particular ministry, the wife actually told him that, look, I don't think it is healthy having this young man around. All right. And he called me, said, my wife told me that it's not healthy. All right. That you seem to be brilliant. You seem to have exposure. You preach well and all of that. So we'll have to just let you go. So I was actually left with no choice. All right. That to try to start to do something. But what I had on my mind that I wanted to communicate was simply this. This is what I had on my mind. I wanted to communicate. That's what in my heart. The challenges I had growing up as a Christian, developing as a Christian, I felt the things that I experienced, I felt I was going to establish a community of believers that will principally address those things and help people, all right, through that. And it was really about bridging the gap between what is written in scriptures and the experiences that people had within their lives, trying to bridge, all right, that gap that was inside their life. So basically, that's what essentially we're doing.
Okay, so how has the journey been so far? Have you been able to achieve?
At the onset, it was tough. It was really tough, and the reason why it was that tough was that as a campus fellowship leader, I had pioneered something in campus fellowship that I don't think had been done before. I had this was in like I had almost changed it into a full-fledged, all right, almost a full-fledged ministry. I was inviting Archbishop Benson in Dahosa. I mean, we had a convention and invited Archbishop Benson, Bishop David Oyedepo, Reverend Tunde John, one conference, all right, Reverend Emiko. I mean, this one, 10-day massive, we turned back University of Lagos Auditorium, 1,500 people from coming in. The night Archbishop Idausa came in. This is a place that sits 2,000. We turned them back. So I think there was that weight of expectation once I started a church that immediately you start, you know, oh, like someone told me, said, oh, I expect within 6 months you'll be 500, within a year you'll be 2,000. I mean, that's the, you know, and things didn't work out that way. So it was tough, not just externally, but mentally speaking, that what's going on here, you know, and all of that. And until I actually made what I would call a structural adjustment in my approach to ministry, and then things began to happen.
Okay.